Lake Circuit now in session. The Honorable Marissa McDermott presiding.
Please be seated. Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor.
As judge of the Lake Circuit Court, I'd like to welcome everyone here today. Every year for the last 26 years, we begin the year with this memorial ceremony by which we remember and pay respect to our colleagues in the profession whom we have lost in the past year. I am deeply honored that this revered tradition will serve as my first official act from this bench. At this time, I would like to recognize the leaders of the Lake County Bar Association. This year's incoming president, Mr. Adam Cedia. Mr. Cedia. And also the immediate past president, Ms. Shalise Tolbert. And finally, our ceremonial master today, Mr. T. Edward Page. And Mr. Page has some motions and preliminary matters to be addressed. Mr. Page, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, it is each year, as the judge has said, that we take this occasion to remember those of our colleagues who have passed. Sometimes we're able to do it by having those who have known them closely and well deliver remarks. At other times, distance, family, and age make it difficult for us to have others to eulogize them. Today we're going to recognize 9 individuals who are listed in the program, and I'm sure that almost everybody here, including those who are past presidents of the Bar Association, of whom I see quite a few in the audience, you knew them at one time or another during their career. It is sometimes the custom to first begin by reading an obituary and then asking the speaker to come forward. I, for my part, find that somewhat cold and indifferent and believe that we get the warmest regard for someone by hearing remarks directly from those who knew them best. In 2 instances, we did not have family to speak, but we do have, in one instance, a volunteer lawyer who is a former judge who will make some remarks, and then I'll have some remarks to make about another of our colleagues. So without further ado, if it please the court, I'd like to call on Harold Abramson to help us remember Rudolph Nasevich.
Good morning, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share some comments and memories of Rudolph Nasevich. I became acquainted with Rudy many years ago, even before I started to practice. One of my brothers was a high school classmate in high. Rudy graduated, went down to grad in Indiana, and then graduated law school in Michigan. And he was a really good guy. I was thinking about 1953. And at that time, the firm was Sachs, Room, and Nasevich. Julia Sachs, Simon and Rudy Nasevich. Later, C. Joel Smith joined the firm. Later, Fred Donnersberger. So Sachs, Room, and Nasevich, Smith and Donnersberger. Sometime later, I'm not sure exactly when, maybe in the mid-60s, the different lawyers went their separate ways. Rudy was a sole practitioner for a number of years. And then from the mid-70s to the mid-80s, he practiced with Ken Reed and I, and with the English Sachs, and got Abrahamson, Reed, and Nasevich. And Rudy and LeVon had 2 sons, both of whom are lawyers. Rudy, Chris, the younger son, is a lawyer with the EPA in Atlanta, where he's been for many years. Son George, through a number of circumstances, wound up in Singapore, and where he is now the CEO of what I think was advertised as the largest casino in the world, owned by Sheldon Hills. And of course, it's been there for a number of years. I saw in the paper over the weekend that the LakeCo in the Great Hotel closed after 80-some years of business, which reminded me that that was a favorite restaurant for Rudy and Ron, where they would celebrate special occasions such as anniversaries, birthdays, etc. When we were in the China Bank building, right across the street for a number of years, there was a restaurant and lounge called Ease, which was very conveniently located, and we would, perhaps more than occasionally, stop there after office hours for adult beverage. And I would call my wife and say, I'm going to go to Ease, and Phyllis would say, who's you going? And I would say, Rudy. And she goes, as long as you're going with Rudy, that's fine. He's a good family man. He was a good family man. Another time, another place, I could share lots of stories about my acquaintanceship and partnership with Rudy, but I will share one with you. We represent a local company and one of their key employees who got sued in the federal court in New Jersey, accused of unfair competition and stealing trade secrets from a competitor, which was American Sand. We were able to get the case dismissed, and we filed a lawsuit, two lawsuits, one on behalf of the employee, one on behalf of the company, in the federal court in Hammond. The case went to trial in the South Bend, and we recovered a very substantial verdict made with the employee. We had a simultaneous submission to the bench trial in the company's case, and recovered a significant judgment on behalf of the company. The case was appealed, and the Seventh Circuit affirmed it on appeal. And we had a very nice contingent fee contract. At that time, we represented several automobile dealers, and one of them was purchasing a Mercedes agency in the South Bend. And by sheer coincidence, the day that Rudy and Ken Reed were in Chicago signing the so-called settlement papers and picking up the check in this malicious prosecution case against American Sand, I was in South Bend closing the sale that was the purchase of a Mercedes dealership. Rudy had a car that did lots of trouble. And Rudy said, when you go there, bring me a brochure of Mercedes. So I told the client, and the client said, instead of a brochure, why don't we just give them a demo and let them try out the car? And this was in the middle of winter, and I said, I don't want to touch that car. I will drive it from South Bend to Hammond where we live. I said, I'll drive it. So we drove the car, put it in my driveway. Rudy at that time had 2 teenage boys, and his backyard was about half concrete, the basketball court, and a couple big floodlights. And so I called up Rudy, and I said, Rudy, you know, how'd everything go in Chicago, blah, blah, blah. And he said, I said, well, I'm in South Bend. I got that Mercedes. He said, what? I said, that Mercedes you said you wanted. Drinking? I said, well, I didn't drinking. I said, but don't worry, Rudy. They said, you don't have to pay for it until Tuesday. And so we drove the car over there. My wife and I, one driving Mercedes, one on car, and put it right under this spotlight in the backyard and a basketball court. And there is this Mercedes. And Rudy's wife went on and said, so he told me, I can't believe it. You just got the check today and you bought a Mercedes. And Rudy said, I don't want to touch the car. We went back and forth from around and around. And Fred Donnersberger, who was a long-time friend and former partner, said, Rudy, if you don't keep that car, I'm going to tell everybody it was repossessed because you didn't pay. You got to keep that car. Anyway, that's one of the stories I think I can't tell. He was a good friend, great lawyer, and a wonderful person, and he's always. Thank you.
I may, I'd like to now call on Attorney George Carberry to remember Elizabeth Bennett.
Good morning, Your Honor. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to say a few words about my friend and former colleague Betty Minning, who died March 15th of last year. Betty was graduated from Middle Tennessee State University as an educator and came to law relatively late in her life. In 1985, she graduated from Loyola University Chicago's law school and immediately joined what was then Thomas Burke, Darley & Cuppy. We found a place for Betty's firm doing ERISA work, retirement plan work, and also estate planning and probate trust administration, which is why many of you probably didn't see her in court. As many of you know, ERISA work can be highly technical work, and as many of you also know, estate planning involves a lot of human empathy and a lot of feeling, and Betty really, I think, had the best of both worlds. She was quite a technician, but she also earned the confidence of many of the firm's most prominent clients. She was a sweet lady of the South. She was raised in Tennessee and South Carolina, had a real Southern charm about her, was instantly likable. She became a partner of the firm, and she retired in 2002, not because of any physical impairment on her part, but her husband at the time, Bud Minning, who some of you might recall was an officer at Gainer Bank, became ill and they wanted to spend some time. She was preceded in death by Bud Minning and is survived by her daughter Laura Minning, who was an attorney in Indianapolis and is now a theologian down in Florida. She will be missed by Laura and her family, and also by many of us who remember her at the firm. Just a very gentle soul and a first-rate lawyer. Thank you.
I would like to begin our next remembrance, if I may, by, in fact, reading part of obituary for Judge Jeffrey Harpin. Judge Jeffrey Arlie Harpin of Hammond, Indiana, passed away on April 22nd, 2016. He was born on October 16, 1951 in Gary. He grew up in Highland, graduated from Highland High School in 69 and earned his bachelor's degree from Notre Dame in 73. His career began in the trucking industry, and it took him from Indiana to Wisconsin to Michigan, Texas, to California, all over. In '88, he left the trucking industry and joined his father, Joseph Harkin, in the family's real estate company. After he had expanded his real estate knowledge, he then determined that he would get, after getting his appraiser's and broker's license, he took over the realtor business in '94. But he also had a dream of being a lawyer. And so in 1992, at the age of 41, he enrolled at John Marshall School of Law in Chicago, Illinois, where he both attended classes and continued his career. He graduated from Marshall in '95. And in 2001, after a number of years of private practice, he was appointed to the office of City Judge in Hammond, succeeding Judge Stefania. And at the end of his appointment, he ran a successful campaign and was himself elected. He closely worked with the mayor on a number of initiatives, including the graffiti removal program, and continued to work with that administration until the time of his death. He was immensely proud of Hammond, Indiana, a city he loved, and he was a mentor and friend to many in the community, and one of those who would like to remember here today.
Thank you. Your Honor, fellow judges and attorneys, and family, friends, and guests, as Attorney Page said, Judge Stefaniak was one of our finer judges at the Hammond City Court. We always had a nice working relationship. He succeeded me a few years later. As Ted said from the obituary, he was appointed when Judge Stefaniak, who followed me at the bench there, was appointed to the Superior Court here in Criminal Division Room 4. The governor at the time appointed Jeff to the bench. Jeff came from a realty family. His father, Doug Harkin, had a large home that served also as the home office for the real estate business right there by the hospital across the street from St. Margaret's in downtown Hammond. We always saw the big sign, Harkin Realty. Jeff went on in his middle years after Notre Dame, big Notre Dame fan, went on to, after his middle years to law school and became a lawyer in middle life. Speaking of big Notre Dame fan, my cousin Nick Samardzija still serves for many, many years as the chief bailiff at the Hammond City Court, and the judge has a Columbus Day time birthday, and my cousin Nick didn't know what to get him for his birthday, so since he's cousins with Jeff Samardzija, who played football for Notre Dame and now is a Major League baseball pitcher, he got a nice football autographed by Jeff Samardzija, gave it to Judge Jeff for his birthday. He probably displayed it in the chambers with the other memorabilia. He was very happy with that, and I said to my cousin Nick, there's nothing like keeping job secure for getting a nice gift like that. And Judge loved Notre Dame so much. The Hammond City Court, as you know, was special for me having served there. It was special to many of us there. He had a good staff. From Highland, he moved to Hammond. We had a nice care for our community. Focused on cleaning up our community. He had the van that went around town, Judge Harkin's graffiti program, not only focusing on cleaning up our community physically, but to clean up our youth with all of our drug and alcohol problems and issues. He was a big activist on 12-step programming to get much of our youth on the right track in life. He, as was said, was disabled in his last 12 to 18 months in life, at age 62. He was having trouble actually approaching onto the bench with the physical disability, but he still continued. He was married to our councilwoman, Kathleen Pasalic, so it was a nice married couple, both in public service in our community, much like another well-known couple in our community that are both dedicated to public service, taking care of Hammond and Lake County. And Kathleen Pasalic, the councilwoman, his wife, predeceased him a few years earlier. He's survived by 3 sons, and it was just a sad day this spring to hear the passing of our friend Jeff, who was somebody that I enjoyed working with, consulting with about a court that we cared very much for a community that we love very much, and will be greatly missed. Thank you.
The next colleague we take this opportunity to remember is Theophilus Poulos. And unfortunately, this is one of those instances in which age alone makes it difficult to have someone here to speak on his behalf. Although I know that if my mentor, colleague, Nick Harris were here, he would take the opportunity to do so. Theophilus Poulos was born on September 25 of 1925 in Munster. He was married for 59 years to Savasti and was the father of Dr. Louis Poulos and was Papu, grandfather, to their children Alexis, Thaddeus, and Zacharias. He was also the father of Leo. He was the beloved son of the late Elias and Theodora Poulos and a brother and many others. Finis immigrated from Zela, Greece when he was 12 years old, and as you will know, that would put him in 1937, a time of great distress in Europe at that time. He moved from Greece directly to Vincennes, Indiana, He served proudly in the Navy of the United States during World War II and again in the Korean War. Once he returned from the Korean War, he graduated with his degree from law school at Indianapolis University. He practiced for over 30 years in Lake County, Indiana. As I said, he was a cherished uncle to 12 nephews and nieces, grandnephews, grandnieces, and who remembered him for his quick wit, charm, and storytelling. It was noted in his obituary that he would be missed by many, many friends. He especially cherished his longtime friendship with John Antonius. He was a member of the St. Demetrius Greek Orthodox Church in Hammond, Indiana, involved with the Order of the Hepa, serving as its district governor and chapter president. There were those that wrote, those that encountered him when they first saw him as a lawyer in court and were taken as students and saw him in court and remembered it enough that they made notes online when his obituary was noticed, and especially from one of his nieces. He was the best, sweetest man, and I loved him very much. He will be truly missed. We can say the same. I'd now like to call, if I may, on Judge Kennedy. Please remember Harry Joseph Kennedy.
Members of the bar, family, guests. I'm going to check the time. I'm up here to talk about Harry Jennings. And Harry had an ability to cover time. So I may talk a little bit longer, but that would just be in his memory. Harry was an unusual person. And as I look around the room, I can see that there's a number of people who would concur with that statement. Let me take you back, though. Think back to when I met Harry. So it was early in October of 1970. I was, at that time, I'd already spent 5 years in the Army, just come back from a stint overseas, and was looking to do something different. And I met an old classmate, a friend of mine, and one thing led to another. I came down to Gary, Indiana, for an interview. I remember driving into the city that day on the toll road and getting off, looking up at the colorful pink, gray sky that I lived with in Gary. And I went into this building, the Marshall Building, and met some of the people in the firm. And they said, "Oh, you got to meet the other main partner, Harry Jennings. We're in the library. He'll be in there in a minute." So I went into the library, and we were probably not too late. We had a little place there, 31 Fifth. I was sitting there by the window waiting. And this big guy comes in. Harry was a big guy. And he came in, and he sat down in the chair across from me, and he started talking. He asked me some questions. I remember he asked me, "Are you a conservative or are you a liberal?" And I said, "Well, I kind of try to avoid labils and, judge every person, every case, on a case-by-case basis." So, and as he did that, he looked down towards the floor. And he says, "Oh my God, I went duck hunting this morning. Got dressed in the dark. And I put my socks on inside out." So he rolled back to the chair, undid that shoe, stuck his fingers down in among that along the sides of that slip, the socks, pulled that sock off, turned it inside out, gave it a shake, put it back on, put the shoe back on, tied it, looked back up at me. And I just looked at him and I said to myself, This is a place I'd like to go to work. That was Harry Jones. He was what he was. He was what you saw, and you got what you saw. That was Harry Jennings. He was born and raised in southern Illinois. Member of the greatest, group of people that ever lived. The people who were through that era in World War II. He came back to go to law school and came into Gary about 51 with this other guy, Spangler, and they worked at some firms, and they finally started their firm, Spangler, Jennings, and Darby. So it was with that firm that I wound up spending the next 30 years of my life there, getting back straight down his socks. But I have to tell you, the toughest day I ever had was the day I had to go tell him that I was leaving the firm. And that was a tough day. But Harry was, as I said, a very unique person. He was a trial lawyer. He was a trial lawyer back in the era when trying cases was really an art. I mean, they didn't have the benefit of these civil procedure rules and discovery, and John's smiling because he knows, some of those old plea and abatement stuff that used to go on back there. But, they didn't have, they didn't know as much. It was more trial by ordeal and trial by surprise. But Harry was a great trial lawyer. He really understood people. He wasn't the smartest book lawyer that there was in Lake County. But he sure knew people. And he knew what made people tick. He knew what they wanted to hear. He knew what appealed to them. And he had a great presence with the juries. And did a great job trying cases. He had some epic cases. And I'm sure Harold got up here. He could tell you about some cases he had with Harry. In fact, I asked him, I mentioned to him this morning, doing this, he says, well, I remember Harry so well. You get that phone call from Harry, and Harry would say, Harold, I've been reviewing this file, and I really don't know why you have it. I mean, this is a no-brainer. This is a loser for you, Harold. I don't see how you're going to make anything out of it. But I'll tell you what, because I like you, and the case worked well, but because I like you, if you can get your client to take $2, I'll see if I can get it from the company. Now listen, that's not an offer, but if you can get in and take that $2, I'll do what I can to try and get it. Sure?
True story.
That was Harry. Harry had a way with people. He had a way with juries. He had a way with lawyers. He had a way with judges. He was larger than life. He truly was. Many times that Southern Illinois twang that he had achieved as a boy growing up there suddenly surfaced when he was talking to a jury in Newton or Banton or Jasper or Starr. He was a good old boy. He'd be there in that same black trial suit that he wore every day at trial. That by the 70s, it was so shiny. Chicago O'Hare used to complain that it was distracting pilots. But he was a great child. But that really was not what made him the special person that he was. His real career in life was being a mentor to all those young lawyers who marched through Spangler, Jennings, and Darby. And he took pride. He was like, I would liken him to the great big mama bear taking care of her cubs. That's how Harry was. You were a young lawyer coming into Spangler's. Harry worked with you. He sat down with you. He talked with you. He went over your cases with you. He challenged you. He didn't like what you were doing. He'd tell you he didn't like it. If you made a mistake, he had more than enough empathy for you to tell you what he thought of your work. And he had a way with people. And, you know, he produced a great number of trial lawyers in his years. And I can remember a case that I was going to try in the court. And Harry worked with me for a couple of weeks before the trial. Every other day or so, he'd have me in his office, and I'd come in and we'd talk about the case. And, you know, Harry had a way of knowing what was going to happen in the trial. And he knew how you needed to approach it, and how you needed to handle what you could expect to come at you. And we did that. He'd go through that with me for, you know, a couple of hours as we prepared. And then the time came for me to go try the case, and so I'm trying it over in the court. And every night, you know, I'd finish up and I'd drive back to Valpo. And Harry had a place out there on Jackson Township. I'd always have to stop by his house and go in and, you know, we'd sit down. Well, Bob, how'd it go today? I said, well, it went pretty well, and then I'd tell him what had happened. Oh. Yeah. And he would proceed to tell me what I had done wrong and what I needed to do tomorrow to make up for it and to get the case back on track. And you know, as Harry would, of course, we won. I mean, that's what Harry did. He knew, like I said, he knew how the jurors worked. He knew what they would take, what they wanted to hear, but that they needed to have answers that they could choose between, you know. Well, you know, my client, he was not negligent. The fact of the time we had something called negligence is different time. Anyway, my client, he wasn't negligent. But if you think he was, plaintiff was negligent also, and that bars his recovery. So he appealed to both sides of the jury. You know, you get him one way, you get him the other way, but you get him in the end. And he was a fantastic trial lawyer in a way. He had his ways. He also had he could say some of the most bodacious things you ever heard. Some of my favorites were, there was a discussion going on about probably some hearsay evidence that we might be trying to keep in, get in, and keep out there. And Harry said those now infamous words, well, is that a rumor or is that what folks are saying? And you know, when you stop and you think about it, there's a lot of wisdom in that, you know. Is that a rumor? Just a rumor? Is that what folks are saying? He was great. Harry had a way with people that he was kind, he was gentle, he was rough, he was hard, he taught, he listened. He was that big mama bear that took care of his guys and did a lot for us over the years. He was a great husband to his bride that he met in Le Havre, France, over a bridge game back in right after World War II, American Red Cross. They had 3 wonderful children, and I can remember, a couple of years ago, we went out there to visit with him. He still had the place out there in Jackson Township, and he would, you know, putter around there. He had his special little caddy at home with him, and he'd still be puttering around on that, you know, cadet tractor. Oh yeah, a little garden patch. He was every man. He was everything that was good about life, about men, and about lawyers. And, he made the place a better, he made the world a better place. It was an honor to have known him, to have worked with him. And to say that his loss was a loss, not just to us, but to the world.
Thank you, Judge. Now I'd like to call on Jim Schreiner to help us remember our late colleague, George Ellsworth Bloom. Allow me then to share with you what I have. George Ellsworth Bloom passed away at age 72 on July 24, 2016. He was born in Washington, D.C. He was raised in Elkhart, Indiana. He was the eldest of 4 children, attended school in Elkhart, Butler University, Indiana University, law school. He moved to Northwest Indiana in 1969 with his wife to practice law at Wagner, Mallow, and Hand, and soon thereafter joining and becoming a partner with Travis, Tatum, Schreiner, and Bloom. This was the start of his lifelong love of practicing law, and he subsequently moved into private practice for himself. He was an avid gardener and reader, as well as an accomplished fisherman, who often angled in the St. Joseph River, a river that was dear to him as it went through Elkhart. He was an intelligent man who loved telling a story or hearing a good joke. He was preceded in death by his wife, was survived by his sisters and brother. He was also survived by daughters. He was grandchildren and will be remembered by his family and the profession. He was called, apparently by some of his friends, the Bloomer, and he was considered by those who posted as an exemplary fellow in many ways, a wonderful friend, a spirited fraternity brother, who was also the best man at this individual's wedding. And he was a good person. He was remembered by his friends and by us. I'd now like to call on Les Day to remember Alan Edward O'Connor. Allow me then to share with you what information I have. Again, we've lost, as one of our speakers pointed out, I believe it was you, Judge, those are of the greatest generation, of which some of you were a part, and many of us have fathers and mothers who were. Those of you who are not fortunate to have been brought up in a military family as I was, my father was an officer in the Army, my mother was an officer in the Navy, and I was more afraid of her. Alan Edward O'Connor, who was 70 at Crown Point, passed away on August 22nd, 2016. He was from Liverpool, England, and he graduated from Christian Brothers High School in Toronto, a very common way for some of our British, now American citizens to have come was through Canada. He graduated St. Benedict's College in Kansas and again the Indiana University School of Law. And like every single one of the immigrants of whom we've spoken so far, he served as an officer in our armies in the Vietnam War and as a captain in military intelligence from 1968 to 1972. And after the war, he worked as an attorney for Draper & Draper in Maryville, and later as a contracts attorney for Hewlett-Packard. He retired in 2013 and was survived by his wife of 46 years and his sisters. He will be remembered by us all. If I may now call on James Martin to remember William Martin.
First, I'd like to thank all of you for showing up today. I want to kind of summarize my dad's life because I was always proud, and I want to tell you why. I have to say this: by the time I was 10 years old, I knew I was going to be a lawyer because my dad was a lawyer, and I was very proud of him. I really never deviated from that track. There was a 2-week stint in high school where I kind of thought I wanted to be a pilot and go to the Air Force Academy, but when I found out my eyes uncorrected were appropriate for that, I got back on my lawyer track. So I have to say it gave me some solace and comfort to know that I knew what I was going to do with my life, and I could go into practice with my dad eventually and not have to worry or stress like some of my colleagues did in law school. What was going to become of them? Where would they clerk in the summer times? Were they going to get a job? Was it going to be with the right firm and all that sort of thing? I didn't go through any of that. I cruised through on automatic pilot. But bit of history on my dad. He was born in Gary, Indiana. He was one of 2 sons. Unfortunately, when he was 5, his 8-year-old brother got run over by a car and killed. So he was raised as pretty much a sole child. He was a go-getter. He was a type A personality. When he was in high school, he was the captain of the junior ROTC. He graduated. He was also born in 1925, December 3rd, like Mr. Coolis. And when he graduated from high school, he was 17. He immediately joined the Navy to get in the war. And that was 1943. And he was stationed down in Georgia. He couldn't stand it. Now, and I have to say, a lot of these things I'm telling you today, we had to drag out of him over the years because he never volunteered in any of this stuff. I didn't know he was a Golden Gloves champ until about 10 years ago. And that was when he was 16. And, you know, back in the day, boxing was big. It was like UFC fighting today. So, you know, it was very popular. But anyway, he gets in the Navy and he's on land, and he can't stand it. So he knows there's a new carrier coming out, and he writes a letter to the admiral who's going to command this carrier. And he says, you know, I've been in the war a year and a half now, and I've been on land and I'm a sailor. Now you got this carrier coming out. Is there any way I can get on? And 2 days later, he got orders, and boom, he was on that carrier. And now he did get in the war a little late. You know, that was the summer of '45, so it was, you know, things were terminating around that time. But he got himself on that carrier. He got himself in a battle situation. I don't think he never said that he really got into any important serious, but at least he got himself on a boat and did what he wanted to do. When the war was over, he used the GI Bill to go to Valpo, and they had this fast track system back then where you could go undergrad and law school in 5 years, and he did that. Started in 47, graduated in 52. My mom and dad got married in 49, so they were married while he was in law school. He worked all kinds of jobs to be able to live the way they lived. And he started right out of law school when he graduated with Gary National Bank. I'm sure some of you remember that before it got merged into what is now J.P. Morgan Chase. He was in the trust department. What was my dad? He was a probate lawyer. He was a probate lawyer for 44 years. But in 1961, when I was born, I am 5'7". The bank salary wasn't quite enough to support that many kids, so he finally went out on his own in 1961, and he practiced by himself. He was not a firm guy. He practiced by himself until his retirement in 1997. In the middle there, in 1982, he was actually a probate commissioner in Lake Circuit Court there, and he did that for a couple of years. He found that it was a little bit too much away from his normal practice, and then he resigned. But I went in with them when I graduated in '86. I was actually working for him while I was in law school, and I will tell you that by the time I took the estate planning class when I was in 3rd year, that class was so easy because of what I learned working with my dad. So writing the wills and trusts, that was a breeze. And he was a good teacher. He was a good mentor to me. Taught me a lot of things I know now. I like to think I was standing on his knowledge base and done a few other things. My dad was the guy who always went after something whenever he thought there was a problem. And he always helped the little guy when he thought it was necessary. I like to do the same. I'll take a case where I don't charge anything. And it doesn't count for pro bono, by the way, because the people that have a little bit of money, so they don't qualify. But what I've learned, especially since he has died, is that he helped a lot more people than I knew about. I was with him for 11 years before he retired, and in that 11 years, I saw him mentor people. I saw him help another attorney out with a probate case, whatever they needed. And I saw, I'd say, 3 or 4 instances of he, basically worked the whole case with that particular attorney. But after he died, I got so many emails and letters and cards and even texts from attorneys that said, your dad was a great guy. He helped me out when I needed it back then. And so I was really surprised to learn the extent of his assistance with other attorneys. And I'll finish with this. He was at assisted living in the last couple of years before he died. And those people said, your dad was a real class act. And I have to agree. Thank you for listening.
I had occasion to talk with Alex Woloshansky before coming over here, and Alex and I have practiced together and against one another for some 40 years. And he came in and he looked around the crowd, and I told him, he said to you, Judge Barak, he said, oh my goodness, shouldn't those who are going to be on next year's list sit up front?
On the waiting list.
This next individual is an individual against whom I've had cases, and I did not know that he had passed until I saw his name on today's list. And that makes me realize that this grade really is great. But for the moment, I'll just sit in a second. If you remember Thomas Perry, Judge William Walker.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, members of the body, Tom Perry passed away on December 23rd of this year. And one of his close friends was George Robinson, who had a court hearing this morning, and so I was honored to be asked to perhaps say a few words about Tom this morning. Tom was born in 1953 and married Mary Beth Sappert. He had 2 children, Christine, who many of us know, who was an attorney, and Jonathan. Christine had work obligations in Chicago today, and Jonathan is a big team pilot in the U.S. Navy, and is going to be here today as well. Tom was a Navy veteran and proud of his service. He was an undergraduate from Purdue. He went to law school at Valpo. All was respected Tom's intelligence. Judy Stanton, who many of us know, attended law school at the same time as Tom. The 2 of them carpooled from Hobart to Valpo for classes. She indicates for the period of time that they carpooled, he played devil's advocate on a daily basis in the car, challenging her in the discussions that they had on the way to and from the law school. Tom is a former council attorney for the city of Lake Station, and he's a public defender in Hobart City Court. He was hired by my predecessor, Tony Cefali, and served in that capacity for 25 years. Last May, he retired from those duties due to poor health. The point at which he determined that he could no longer serve in that capacity was on his last day in Hobart City Court, when he found himself too weak to walk from the council table to the bench. At that point, he decided that he was done. I found Tom to be thorough, to dedicate whatever time he needed to the work that he did for the defendants of Hobart City Court. He expected a lot of cooperation from those defendants, which he didn't always get. but he did tend to push the envelope on behalf of his clients. He was organized. When he had an office here on Main Street north of the Government Center, I remember going into his office and seeing signs on his desk that basically said, plan your work and make your plan. And I think that's the way he lived his life. He engaged in a variety of different hobbies over the years. He participated in the community band in Hobart, played guitar, he got certified as an EMT, he spent time as a pilot. And when I talked with him about some of these things that he did, he commented on the fact that he seemed to go from one thing to another to another. He said, when you form an interest, he said, you need to chase it, pursue it for 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, you're going to get stale, it's not going to be as much fun, and you're not going to be as good. So then you need to move on to something else. So I think this was part of Tom's plan. In 5 years, he moved on to a different interest. And it's interesting that he did that, because I know that he enjoyed the time he spent doing some of these things with his children. Tom's dad, Ted Holstein, was an attorney in Denver, and passed away shortly before Tom was admitted to practice. Ted suffered from diabetes and lost both legs as a result of that disease. Tom always was, I think, concerned that he might share some of the problems of that genetic illness. And in fact, he did. I think that his commitment to his life and impacting as much into it as he could had something to do with his concern that we may have to face that reality down the road. I think his reaction to it says a lot about his courage. George and I both had opportunities to speak with Tom on the phone while he was at Hines, and the comments that struck me were when he commented about how he had a full life, family, children, and he could face any of the challenges of the ravages of that disease because of that. And he felt sympathy for the other patients up there who lost limbs in combat and were in their 20s and didn't feel like they had a full life ahead of them because of their injury. He was obviously very proud of both of his children. I think many people who know him think of him as a somewhat difficult adversary. I will say that in the 25 years I've been on the bench in Hobart City Court, there have been occasions when I've lost patience and later maybe felt a little uncomfortable about lacking in judicial temperament. And I can honestly say that Tom Perry was, in the majority of those cases, the cause. But Tom, for example, would have a plea agreement that he negotiated with the state that he knew that I was in all probability not going to approve. But he would present his best shot at trying to convince me. And in some instances, the same plea agreement on behalf of different defendants, over. I think he thought maybe he was going to wear me down, I don't know. There are times when I wouldn't lose my patience with it. And people would say to me, why don't you get rid of him since he works for the court and hire somebody else's public defender if he's that much of a source of aggravation? The reason that never happened is because I could never find any fault of the work he did on behalf of his clients. He did an outstanding job for the defendants in Hobart City Court. He did an outstanding job on a very limited income because he wasn't well paid for the hours he put in. And so I had nothing but respect for the work he did and for his intelligence. And I couldn't fault him for trying to push the envelope. Oftentimes, maybe I would find fault if somebody doesn't. And so I respected him. Many people didn't see gestures of friendship from him, but I did. In the years that I've known Tom, and this even prior to the time I took the bench, even though we would be at odds sometimes on the case or questioning with him, I received a phone call from him on my birthday every year. And that continued for over 25 years. A big thing perhaps, but he never forgot. And I can't say that about anybody else. And he seemed genuinely touched by small acts of friendship from others. It really seemed that the gesture seemed to mean more to him than you would expect. So, many people may not have known Tom well, but I think George and I did. And I think we both respected him. So, I'm happy to be able to share him.
Well, Judge, to give you an idea of how things look depends on where you stand. Tom was never anything but kind and nice and gentle. And when I would come to your court and I would need guidance on what I should do next, I always turned to Tom. Now I realize that may have been a mistake. But it worked out. Adam Cedia is president of the Lake County Bar Association, and this is his first occasion, his first formal action as president of the Bar Association. So I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce President of the Lake County Bar Association, Adam Cedia. Thank you, Tracy. I just want to give a few closing remarks. I've heard comments over the years that some people consider this a morbid way to begin the year. But at a time when we're all looking forward and expecting in the new year, I think it's good that we look back and remember where we came from and honor those who went before us. So I would like to give a few thank yous, first of all, to Judge McDermott for continuing the tradition and letting us use her courtroom for this ceremony. And then especially to T. Edward Page for taking over the job Banjoya did for so many years and serving as our Master of Ceremonies. And then to each of our presenters who took the time and gave some very warm and heartfelt remarks about those work. So thank you. And then I want to thank everyone in the gallery for attending today and giving their time to help remember our deceased attorneys. So thank you all, and I look forward to serving as your president for the next year. Our executive director, Deborah White, is here, and she has arranged some refreshments that are in the back for you all to enjoy together, to visit some more, talk some more, reminisce some more. And at this time, Your Honor, I'd like to formally move that these, the first proceedings before your court this year, in fact, you as a judge, be made a part of the permanent records of the court, and that those that might request copies of transcripts for any particular attorney may do so through Mary Slaffendor, who we thank for assisting here today. And I ask that these be made, and so moved that they be made a part of the permanent record of the court.
Very well. The motion having been made, the motion is hereby granted. I want to also extend my thanks to the Lake County Bar Association Director Deborah White, our new president Adam Cedia, our outgoing president Shalise Tolbert, Mr. T. Edward Page. Thank you for your efforts in making this a successful event today. Also, I also want to extend our appreciation to Mary Slaffender for her court reporting services today. Ms. Slaffender, I'd like to give you a hand. Thank you very much. There are a few people that truly know us as well as our professional colleagues, and the memories of these departed Lake County attorneys and judge were truly served well today by you who opened your hearts and minds. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your generosity. Our business being concluded on this day, the hearing is now in recess until next year at this time. Thank you. The court stands adjourned.
All rise.